Today we are going to explore the historical context and the plot overview of The Women of Troy by Euripides. The goal is to get this done in a 5-minute overview. I'll retell the story using the images from Wolfgang Petersen's 2004 epic film Troy, starring Eric Bana, Brad Pitt, and Orlando Bloom. So where does it all begin? The elopement of Helen of Sparta. So Prince Troy of Paris is invited to judge a competition on who is the fairest of the goddesses. The goddess Aphrodite promised Paris the most beautiful woman on earth, Helen of Sparta, if he chooses Aphrodite as the winner of the competition. Paris then elopes with the married Helen of Sparta and takes her to his home in Troy. King Menelaus of Sparta, Helen's husband, vows revenge and rallies the Greek armies, including his brother Agamemnon, to invade Troy. Due to the significant wall surrounding Troy, the war lasted 10 years, with the Greeks unable to penetrate it. Knowing this, part of what we will discuss through the Women of Troy is who is to blame for the war and the following suffering. Is it lustful Helen? Is it the selfish and ignorant Paris? Is it the vengeful Menelaus? Or the manipulative Aphrodite? Another event before our text that is still important to understand is the death of Hector of Troy. Hector, also the Prince of Troy, was Paris's older brother. Hector kills a young Greek protege named Patroclus on one of the foreshore battles. Patroclus was a good friend of the greatest of all Greek warriors, Achilles. Achilles then challenges Hector to a battle, one-on-one. And during this battle, Hector, the heir to the throne of Troy, is slaughtered by Achilles. Achilles then desecrates Hector's body. He drags it from the back of his chariot outside the walls of Troy in a real act of shame, and this is in front of Hector's family, his father King Priam, his mother Queen Hecuba, his own wife, and presumably Paris as well. Now, while you don't need to know Hector and Achilles specifically for the Women of Troy, Andromache, who is Hector's widow, and his young son and heir, Astyanax, are pivotal to the text. So it is important that you understand how they fit in the family tree. Then the bit about the Trojan horse, which I'm sure you've heard about already. So with the help of the goddess Athena, the Greeks created the Trojan horse ruse. Essentially, the Greeks left this giant wooden horse on the beach, which they had occupied for the last 10 years, and they sailed off into the distance. The Trojans, believing this to be a peace offering, decide to take the horse inside the walls. Unfortunately, the horse was hollow, and there were several Greeks hidden inside the horse. The Greeks are then able to invade Troy from within, as these men open up the gates and allow the Greek army, which actually hadn't sailed too far, to come back and invade in the night. During the course of this battle, King Priam of Troy, killed. Paris, killed. And the great Greek warrior Achilles, also killed. That, I think, demonstrates to you that this was a very bloody battle. And from what you will read in the Women of Troy, it was a battle where there was much murder, acts of sexual violence as well, and a lot of looting. So it was very fierce. The aftermath of the war. After all of this happens is where our play begins. Hecuba, The Queen of Troy has survived, and she opens our play throned in dust. Imagine her on her knees as the city burns around her. She laments for the loss of her husband, King Priam, for her sons Hector and Paris. And during our text, she also learns of even more hardship. Her daughter, Polyxena, was slaughtered as a sacrifice to Achilles, and her other daughter, Cassandra, is betrothed to the Greek Agamemnon and is to be sold off as his concubine. Later in the text, again, she's hit by more hardship as her grandson, Hector's son, Astyanax, is also murdered during the play, The Women of Troy. This ultimately ends the royal bloodline of Hecuba's family and this family ruling over Troy. That's it, they're all gone. Now, if you are a little bit confused still, this can be a really handy map for who are part of the Trojans and who are part of the Greek crew. You can see at the top, I've started like a traditional family tree. We have Hecuba, the Queen of Troy, who is obviously wedded to Priam, King of Troy. These are patriarchal societies, and as such, Priam was the ruler of Troy. We know that Priam was killed in the war. Prior to that, he was a fair and noble king, and that he fathered many children. The children that you will need to know: his firstborn son with Hecuba, we said they're Hector, Prince of Troy. He was heir to the throne, killed in battle by Achilles, and his body is desecrated. He was married to Andromache of Troy. She was to be the future queen alongside him and was raised to be a noble, fair lady. She learns her fate throughout our play, which is to be sold off as loot to the Greeks, essentially as a trophy of war. It is their son, Astyanax of Troy, who was to be the heir to the throne after his father Hector was slaughtered. He too is killed by the Greeks during the play, and the future of Troy dies with this child. As we move across the family tree, we can see Priam's other children. Polyxena of Troy, his daughter, who is murdered by the Greeks during the battle. She's killed as a sacrifice on the grave of Achilles. So a really pointless and vicious death. We then have his other daughter, which he shares with Hecuba, Cassandra of Troy. Known to be of a frenzied visionary, she seeks sanctuary during the bloodshed in Athena's temple. Athena, you'll remember, was a goddess. Now, in the temple, Cassandra is ripped from the altar while seeking sanctuary, and she is raped by the Greek soldier Ajax. She is then told after this she will be a concubine or a mistress for Agamemnon, also part of the Greek army. Now, the remaining child, which we've spoken about, is Paris of Troy. We spoke about the fact that he was promised the most beautiful woman by the goddess Aphrodite. He elopes with Helen of Sparta and is ultimately killed. And how much blame you want to put on him for all of this happening, it's up to you. Connected to him there, we start to see the Greeks with Helen of Troy, or Helen of Sparta, whichever you would like to call her, who also elopes with Paris. She's married to Menelaus, a Greek king. Now, throughout our text, we hear a bit from Helen herself, where she claims to have been kidnapped or forced by Paris. Now, Hecuba, his mother, strongly denies this. This war has gone on for 10 years, and Helen certainly, in her opinion, has not been held against her will. Whether we start to place some blame on Helen and whether the other characters do can be something that you examine. The other Greek characters are also there in blue. You have Menelaus of Sparta, who obviously starts this war to get his wife back or get vengeance. Remember, he is a Greek king. He's very angry. He is upset because he's been betrayed. He's been emasculated by what's happened with his beautiful wife running off with this Prince of Troy. And as such, to save face, he wages a 10-year war against Troy. He takes with him his brother Agamemnon to join armies and also support the cause. Throughout the text, you'll also hear from and about some other Greeks. We did talk about Achilles, the great Greek warrior, who serves under the banners of Agamemnon and Menelaus. So he is just a foot soldier, but he is known for his great work. And then we learn about Talthybius, who will also be part of the play. He is the Greek messenger or herald. He passes his messages between the women, the remaining women known as the chorus and Hecuba. And in some ways, he's the most sympathetic of the lot. Now that is the women of Troy in a nutshell, the who's who and the what's what. For more detail, you'll need to read the text. Good luck.